Well, my friends, our last animal classification group is insects. Probably my least favorite animal group. And even though I can't say that I'm a big insect lover, I've got to say they are kind of cool. So we're going to learn some things about insects that maybe you've never even heard before. Hopefully some of this information will be new. And we're going to start right here with the body of an insect. Because as we've been talking about animal groups up until this point, in each animal group, we've been able to look at a member from that group and be able to identify just by looking at it what animal classification group it belongs to. When we see a mammal, we're looking for an animal with hair, right? That's like a dead giveaway right there. So far, it's the only animal that has hair. Mammals are the only animals that have hair. When we're thinking about a bird, the bird classification group, birds are the only animals that have feathers. When we're thinking about amphibians, we're thinking about animals when we're looking at them that they have more slippery, wet skin. And we know that reptiles have dry, scaly skin for the most part. Now remember, there's always a few rule breakers thrown in here and there. They're so naughty. But for the most part, the majority all have observable characteristics. That means we can just see them, and we should be able to know, just based on looking at them, what animal group they belong to. So that's no different for insects. When we look at a bug or an insect, we can tell it belongs in the insect category if it has these three main body parts. And those are the head, the thorax, which is the middle section of its body, and then the abdomen. Okay? So all insects have these three body parts. If you're looking at a bug and it does not have these three body parts, then it is not an insect, right? The other characteristics that are unique to insects are insects have 6 legs, okay? We'll count them up to make sure this guy is an insect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All insects have 6 legs. Not 2, not 3, not 5, not 8, 6. And then there's one last little feature that insects have. Let's see, I haven't used this dark blue color yet, and that is the antenna. They have 2 antennae on top of their heads. All right, so let's review really quickly. All insects have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. So the thorax is the middle body section, and the abdomen is at the back side of their body, on the back end of their body. Okay? And of course the head is up at the top or the beginning. So those 3 things have to be present for it to be an insect, and they must have 6 legs and 2 antennae. Now you might be looking at this bug and think, or this insect and think, wait a minute, where are its wings? Well, not all insects have wings. Think about it. This little guy looks like an ant to me. And although some ants have wings, some don't. So not all insects have wings. So unlike birds, where all birds have wings, insects don't all have wings, although the majority or the most of them do. All right? Okay, so that's a nice strong beginning for insects. We're going to learn a little bit more. Some pretty cool stuff, how they really do help our planet in a lot of different ways. Okay, let's go. Hi guys. So I found this cool book. It's called We Need Insects. And when I first saw it, I was like, really? Do we really need insects? Because they're really not my favorite. They're always bothering me. I'm always shooing them away when we're out on the playground. It's not really my favorite animal group at all. But then I started reading the book, and I realized just how valuable and important insects are. So I'm thinking you guys might be interested too. It's got a lot of good information. So let's give it a go. Don't squash that bug. Each day, many insects help us and our planet. Without insects, Earth would be a really different place. The Earth needs insects. Insects are an important part of our nature. Some insects help plants grow, and some eat other harmful insects. Some insects help keep the soil or the dirt healthy. Many insects are food for other living things. Some even make things we use. We need insects. Some insects make things we use? Can't think of anything right now, but maybe they'll tell us about it more as we read on. Some insects can be pests. I agree with that. These insects are harmful to people, plants, and other animals too. Some pests, such as mosquitoes, bite humans and animals, and other pests damage plants. Often though, these insects are also food for helpful insects and other animals. So sometimes we actually need pests too. So even those pesty insects actually have a purpose. They're food for the good insects. Insects help plants grow. We need insects to help plants grow. Bees, wasps, flies, moths, and butterflies all fly from flower to sip nectar, which is a sweet liquid found in flowers. When they land on a flower, pollen sticks to their bodies. And pollen is a powder on flowers. So if you've ever picked up a flower before and there's been a colorful, residue left behind and it has a little bit of a texture to it, that's actually the pollen, that little bit of powder that's left behind when you're touching a flower. So it turns out that's really helpful. When insects fly from flower to flower, they spread the pollen. And plants need the pollen to make seeds. So if there was no pollen, there wouldn't be any seeds. And if there's not any seeds, how would our plants grow and our food? Something to think about. The seeds then grow into new plants. So the pollen spread by insects helps new fruits, vegetables, and flowers grow every day. The next time you eat a fruit or a vegetable, thank an insect. I never thought about that before. I do love fruit, and I'm starting to love veggies. So I guess insects are really helpful. Insects that are helpful to humans are called beneficial insects. If something's beneficial, it's like has a positive impact. It's good for you or good for the environment or whatever the case may be. Many beneficial insects are predators. We know what that means. They eat pests. Ladybugs are great predators. Who would have thought? Those tiny little ladybugs are predators. Wow! Some ladybugs can eat more than 50 aphids a day, and aphids are pests. That's a good for farmers because a group of tiny aphids can damage a whole plant. So aphids are tiny little insects that eat a farmer's crops or plants. But then along comes the beneficial insect, right? The predator, the ladybug, and the ladybug gobbles up all those aphids that were going to ruin the crops. It's pretty neat how it all works together. Farmers like to have certain predator insects in their fields. That way they don't have to use chemicals to kill pests, because these chemicals can be harmful to people and animals. So having those insects around their farm, things like ladybugs, actually helps keep our farms safer for all of us, because then they're not using chemicals to keep the plants growing. Cool. Some beneficial insects are parasites, and many parasites lay eggs on or in pest insects. The eggs hatch into larvae or young insects, and as the larvae grow, they eat the pests. So So it sounds like we're trying to keep the pests under control so they don't bother us so much. Smart gardeners find ways to bring beneficial, remember beneficial means good, positive, insect predators to their gardens. They attract the insects by growing certain plants. The insects like certain plants and flowers. So after a lot of research, farmers realized what kind of flowers and plants the beneficial insects like. So they start to plant them around their fields. It brings more of the positive insects closer to their crops, and that way the predators or the beneficial insects eat up all those pests, and those pests then won't ruin the crops. Some beneficial insects have big appetites, kind of like me these days. I've been eating a lot. Lacewing larvae can eat hundreds of aphids in a day. They also like caterpillars and insect eggs. A hoverfly larva can eat 50 aphids a day, or up to 400 in its lifetime. An insect called the assassin bug is a hunter. These bugs feed on many different insects. Let me close that. Insects help the soil. Imagine stepping on dead plants and animals on your walk to school. Eee. No thanks. That's what might happen if insects weren't around. Maggots, or fly larvae, and some grown insects are decomposers. They get rid of unhealthy things in the environment. So that means when maybe there's a dead animal or something else that's been killed in an area, bugs or insects will come in and actually feed on it. All right, so then it's not affecting us. They're taking care of it for us. Decomposers eat dead plants and animals and animal waste, which is their poop. Waste is another name for their poop. That puts nutrients back into the soil. So by doing this, they help make the soil richer. Interesting. Never thought about that. Insects are part of a day's meal for many animals. Some birds eat hundreds of insects in one day. So even though insects are beneficial, like especially for farmers like we just talked about, they also have predators themselves. So, animals like birds eat hundreds of insects in one day. Bats and frogs eat insects too. These animals need insects to survive. So that's part of the food chain, and we'll talk more about that at a later date, but we know that other animals eat other animals. It's how they survive. Animals aren't the only ones who eat insects. People do too. Ooh. In many places, people feast on all kinds of insects. It's true. All around the world, even here in our country, people do eat insects. Many of these insects are actually good for you. This tortilla with roasted grasshoppers and avocado is from a restaurant in Mexico. So it's not just that people are eating insects in their homes. You can actually go to a restaurant and order something with insects on it. I'm not sure I'm ready to try that just yet. Insects help make all sorts of things that we use. Oh, good, because this is what I was curious about. If it weren't for bees, we wouldn't have honey to eat. That's right. Bees make honey. Forgot all about that. If it weren't for silkworms, we wouldn't have silk, and that's a fabric. The table below lists some of the things insects provide. Bees give us honey and beeswax. The silkworm gives us silk. And this is called cochineal insects, and they actually give us red dye. Pretty cool. Here's a picture. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. And actually it's a beehive and they're making honey. It's actually a place close to my house that you can go watch the bees. It's really fascinating. Once they open up, if we're still in school, I'll try to get a video of that for you guys. Insects are beautiful. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes I agree. Many people think insects are beautiful, and some people collect them. The different colors, shapes, and sizes of insects are amazing. Many zoos have gardens where people can see the beauty of insects. And some examples are the Schaefer beetle, a striped winged grasshopper, a cardinal beetle, a mullein moth caterpillar, ooh, that is really cool, and a 7-spot ladybug. Really neat. So when it comes down to it, guys, we need insects here on Earth. What would life be like without them? Some plants might not produce as many fruits and vegetables, and that means we wouldn't have as much food. Many plants might be damaged or destroyed. Dead plants and animals might stay on the ground longer. Some animals might need to find other food. People wouldn't have many things we use every day. So the next time you raise your foot to stomp on an insect, walk around it instead, because we really need them. Pretty cool. Now, this book didn't cover everything I want you guys to know about insects, so a few of the questions hopefully you're thinking about in your head that we covered in other animal classification units is, what about, do insects have a backbone? Well, guess what? They don't have a backbone. So this is the first group. They don't have a backbone. They're called, instead of vertebrates, they are actually invertebrates, right? And I'll spell that, I'll put that on one of our slides. Invertebrate, it means they do not have a backbone. They're also cold-blooded, right? So they need to go out into the sun to warm their bodies up, and when they get too hot, they actually have to retreat or go back into someplace cool. Let's see, we talked about they have 3 body parts, and they have 6 legs and 2 antennae. We talked that a majority of insects have wings, but not all, and they lay eggs. So if you remember, what's that word for animals that lay eggs again? Yes, oviparous. Oviparous is an animal that lays eggs. Insects definitely lay eggs. And then, when we think about how they breathe, they don't have lungs like we do, and they don't have gills like fish. They actually have a system of tubes in their bodies, and that is how they breathe. They breathe through tubes that run along the inside of their bodies. Pretty fascinating stuff. All right, guys, I hope you love this information about insects, and I probably have a little bit more I'll share with you at some point too. Oh yeah, I definitely want to investigate honeybees more, because they seem to play a really important part for our planet. And I know they're starting to be, I don't know if they're actually endangered yet, but I know there's a concern that we don't have as many honeybees as we used to. And that's going to be a problem for our planet. So I'll probably add that in a separate link. All right, guys, that's it for now. So I hope you actually learned a lot about insects and maybe think they're a little cool like I do now. Cool. See ya. Check out these insects. Aren't they amazing? Maybe insects aren't so bad after all. Now, guys, one thing you'll notice is there are no spiders on this page. And that's because spiders are not insects. Remember, insects have 6 legs. How many legs do spiders have? They have 8. So they cannot be considered insects.